Hey, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. So today we will talk about Kepler's experience with EHR integrations, and I want to jump right in. So can you give us kind of an overview of the EHR integration project that Kepler Team has worked on, specifically like point-click care, Cerner, Epic, Carrier, and Charm Health?
Sure. So, since we are a medtech engineering agency, we do work with EHRs a lot. Pretty much every startup right now wants to be integrated with EHR at certain point of their journey, and there are different reasons why. Some integrate with EHRs to make the engineering effort less on their end. Let's say you're building a telemedicine platform, right? And you want to store the encounter information somewhere. You can choose to develop this piece on your own, create custom code, or you can just decide, oh, okay, I'm going to do an EHR integration and store this information in EHR and only develop patient-facing portal, for example.
So just to clarify that I'm on the same page, essentially, EHR is not something that just hospitals use. It can be something that I can use to build my product, correct?
Correct. And in this case, you as a startup owner would probably pick a smaller EHR, such as Charm Health or let's say Carrier. It just allows you to basically code less. And also solves a lot of problems with security. If you know that this EHR vendor is responsible for PHI storage, it means a lot of less compliance and security-related efforts that you need to do, basically. So we had a few clients that decided to go this route just to go to market faster and basically just rely on that existing technology as a part of their product offering.
That makes sense. So in terms of all those like EHRs out there, like point-click care, Cerner, Epic, Carrier, Charm Health, is it all the same? Can I use any of those EHRs to build my project, or there are some specific use cases? Could you talk a little bit about this? Like if we're on like the side of the startup who is thinking where to store patient data safely to build their platform or solution?
Well, it's a great question because all EHRs are different. Sometimes we think about the EHR, oh, it's an EHR, it's the same thing. But basically, these are companies, right? And all of them have their own business model and they are different. Some EHRs exist to help bigger hospitals and even hospital chains. I think everybody knows Epic, Cerner, right? They are two flagman EHRs, and most of their customers are these big hospital networks. They don't normally work at the small independent clinics. There are some niche EHRs, such as point-click care and Matrix, and they are specifically serving the long-term care facilities, right? So you would not see them at the acute hospitals, for example. They are designed to be installed at SNFs or other long-term care. And there are smaller EHRs that are more niche. Some of them are designed for, like, let's say, dental practices, ophthalmologists, or just primary care. For example, we worked with Charm Health, and they are mostly used by smaller practices. What makes them unique, though, compared to other offerings such as, for example, Practice Fusion, is that they do have these APIs that make them not just an EHR for a smaller practice, but an EHR that a startup can use to build their solution on top of them.
That makes sense. So it looks like there is a lot of complexity, a lot of choice, and there are some EHRs that focus on specific use cases. But I know Kepler has worked on projects where we act as a vendor to help to integrate with this bigger EHR such as Cerner or Epic. Could you talk a little bit about Kepler's expertise in that space?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to Cerner and Epic, and even point-click care and EHRs such as Allscripts, most of them have a marketplace. What it means is that these EHRs are open for data exchange. I think everybody heard about the Interoperability Act. It essentially made the EHRs to make their APIs open to third-party developers. Of course, it's not that easy in terms of bureaucracy and the process that you have to go through, but these EHRs have a marketplace. What it means for you, for example, as a startup owner in the medical space, is that you can integrate your solution with these EHRs and be published on that marketplace as a provider of digital service. This is very valuable, not just from interoperability standpoint maybe, but also from the marketing standpoint. If you are published on this marketplace, it means that first and foremost, you are trusted by those EHRs. It kind of gives some baseline of, well, these EHRs actually allowed you to be published in their marketplace, meaning that they kind of vetted you on the technology side and also on the business model side, that you can be a trusted partner.
So this publishing on the marketplace, is it the only way to integrate with the EHR, or are there other ways to do it?
There are other ways. However, this is the most popular way. Sometimes, you can do this integration if you already have a relationship with a certain hospital that has this EHR installed, and you may, only get this integration working at that specific hospital. But if you are just coming as a third-party vendor, that is probably the most straightforward way. Also, these EHRs, these are big companies, right? And they have their own processes. So going and following this process is pretty straightforward, and the EHRs already have that process. If you want to go, on the sidelines, you kind of, you probably have, if you have connections, probably you can do that.
So has Kepler ever done it on the sidelines?
Well, we have a client that did that, but they had a very strong relationship with the hospital that allowed them to use their installation to do the first pilot. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the process itself. So when you have to scope and plan this EHR integration with a big hospital to ensure success, what do you do? What are the phases or steps to make it happen?
Well, first of all, we need to understand what the business model is, right? Sometimes even our clients come to us and ask, well, what EHRs should we integrate with? Right. So, it's a kind of naive question, but sometimes we can help with the answer. But if the decision has been made to integrate with a major EHR, usually we try to build a timeline first, because sometimes the code that needs to be created is not that big of an effort, but planning enough of the time is very important, because first of all, there is some documentation that has to be done at the beginning. It's a contract with the EHR. It's understanding that probably there will be some fees involved to just get the access to the developer program. That's the first step. The EHR will probably give you an account manager who will be having regular meetings with you throughout the process and will help you to, will help guide you. So you have to be prepared that engineering power, yes, this is something that you need to have, but also you will need to have a strong account manager, somebody on your end who will be having these conversations and making sure that we do not have enough of bureaucracy on the way. So that's kind of the first step. Second step would be actual coding and figuring out what security standards your application has to be meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're talking about EHR integration, it's always patient data, right? Patient data means HIPAA compliance, and also means that if there's a breach, it's kind of really bad.
Might get expensive real fast.
May get expensive really fast, yeah. So you really need to kind of get prepared to have certain level of security built into your application. And the EHR, they will actually ask you these questions. They probably will send you a list of, these are our requirements. We need your data to be, encrypted at rest. It has to be encrypted in transit. You need to know who has access to your database at all times, log it. They do have a certain list. One of the steps usually will be that EHR wants to understand your business model and what you do with the data, what kind of data you will have access to, and why.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they are very particular. If you are saying, I want to get a list of the patients through that integration, they will ask you why, what you will do with that, and they will actually verify that indeed you are accessing this data through your application.
Maybe just a very stupid question, but if I have this small startup that I built with a friend, but it's super valuable and my friendly primary care provider loves it, and I want to build an app with Epic or Cerner, will they talk to me?
Maybe. Again, at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about why you would want to be published in the marketplace, and exposure was a big driver. Another big driver usually is that you are an established company, or maybe small business, right? And you already work with independent providers, or you have a physician group, for example, who uses your technology. Usually one of the very common complaints from the clinical staff is, well, I hate to actually need to be able to I hate the fact that I need to log into so many different systems. There's an EHR, there is this your telemedicine platform, then there is this documentation platform, then there's billing, and I need to kind of have all this, different screens on my computer, and I forgot, and all that stuff, and I forgot my passwords. That's a death by clicks. I'm a doctor, I don't want to do that. And this is one of the other very popular reasons why companies pursue EHR integration. They just want to make the life of their providers, of their doctors, easier, so that they could do everything from one screen. And that is absolutely valid reason. So if you have a certain product that is already working, but you just want to improve the workflow, make it easier for the providers, or maybe for the patients, right? To access the data, to maybe make the data entry easier, then EHR integration is certainly one of the things that...
So you don't necessarily have to be huge to do it?
No, well, as soon as you are... you have a valid use case, as soon as you have a secure enough platform, that certainly is a way to go. Because if you just go to Google and you search for, let's say, Epic Marketplace or Cerner Marketplace, the link pops up pretty much on the first page. You click on that, and you can browse. There are tens and tens of different applications that are already integrated with the EHRs.
Olga, you make it sound so easy. So a small guy can do it, Kepler can do it. In your experience, what are some common challenges that you may come across when you're working with a big HR system? And maybe you could tell a little bit how Kepler can help overcome such challenges.
Well, I think patience always helps. Because when we were just starting with that, we didn't have experience working with these big companies, right? And usually the developer's expectation would be, oh, okay, I registered the website, I got the security keys, and I can go ahead and do whatever I want, and it's really fast. And well, maybe I need to ask my manager to put the credit card on file, and it's
done.
With EHRs, there is a little bit more bureaucracy involved. So you need to set up the contract. The EHR actually validates you that you're, a trusted company that potentially can become, a trusted partner. There is some legal stuff involved. So it could take some time before you actually will need to involve your actual developers into the process, right?
So who is doing all that work that you're talking about?
Well, you need to have a project manager, pretty much, or a business analyst.
Can Kepler provide that, or should it be someone from a company that is doing the integration?
Usually it's a joint effort. We definitely can come and help you guide through the process, tell a little bit what steps will be involved. But a lot of that you probably will need to do yourself. Sending an email to set up the initial meeting, prepare the information about what your startup wants to do, what kind of integration, why. That's pretty much it. So you need to kind of have a pitch. But after that, we can walk you through what's going to happen next. And someone from our team, maybe not an engineer, but maybe as business analyst or product analyst, can help you work together with the EHR to go through the steps. Because as soon as you are approved by initial screening, you will get access to their developer program. So you will get a login to a portal where you can create your test app. And at that point, your engineers already can start exploring the API documentation and maybe creating some first draft versions of your integration.
And does the startup need to pay anything for this to the EHR itself, or do they provide it free?
It depends on the EHR. Each has its own program. They actually do have PDFs where you can read about what steps are involved, how much each tier will cost. Sometimes you pay just to be a part of the program, and then sometimes you pay for each implementation. What it means is after you published on the marketplace, what it means, it's very similar to App Store or Google Play. Imagine you get published, and then someone will need to install your app on their end. And that someone is a hospital or a clinic who has that EHR. So their EHR admin will go to the marketplace and say, hey, I want this app because it's really cool and nice. And they will have to enable that on their end. And sometimes EHR will start collecting fees based on how many active implementations you have.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to come back to the data piece because this is the most kind of scary part of bringing a vendor to interact with patient data. So can you explain the steps that Kepler Team takes to ensure patient data remains secure and compliant with regulations such as HIPAA?
Of course. Well, integration doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean that you will actually download certain data from EHR, right? Maybe you will just upload certain pieces of data. Maybe you will just exchange certain pieces of data. Every integration has a scope. For example, one of the clients that we recently helped, they just had to do appointment scheduling. So you, as a patient, log into the application and you can create an appointment with a doctor. You can search for a doctor who works for the hospital. Oh, this is, for example, a pediatrician. I want to see the pediatrician. Okay, this is their schedule. Okay, 12 p.m. tomorrow. I want to book this appointment. That's just one workflow, and usually the integration, it is limited to that certain workflow. Of course, it's still a sensitive information, even the fact that we know that the patient has this appointment tomorrow, it's still HIPAA. So you need to do your homework. However, we feel it's not as scary as it might sound, because right now, all those big three companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they have amazing capabilities within their cloud that helps us, and pretty much like every startup, create a very secure environment. You can do backups, you can host your application on both East Coast and West Coast. You can encrypt your data. You can use key management service to store these keys securely. You can control access on the DNS level. You can do so many different things: logging, CloudWatch, monitoring. Like, everything is there at your fingertips. It's not as difficult as it used to be when all the applications were hosted on premises, or even like 10 years ago when AWS was not so widespread. So there are so many different things. Of course, you have to have your code secure itself, right? And we at Kepler, we do a lot of things to make sure that the data is secure. First of all our projects have peer review process where code that was created by one engineer got a code review by someone else, which means at least two pair of eyes check everything and make sure. We always do secure testing, and we always try to automate as many things as we can. For example, with Amazon, we use Amazon Inspector that on a regular basis scans all the infrastructure to make sure that we are not just deploying a secure solution, but we are also checking, are there any new vulnerabilities that are appeared since the last time we checked it.
So you started talking about some specific things, and I appreciate you sharing the insight about the support the cloud providers are offering. But are there any unique challenges or best practices that Kepler on its own developed that could be helpful for people who are starting out with this whole space?
Well, we do have a lot of different checklists, right? For example, if there's a new startup and they come and they say, well, we want to develop a solution and we want to be secure enough to start enrolling our first clients, we always come to them and say, hey, there will never be time when you can say, I am 100% or 110% secure, right? There's always be something, but there are certain things that you definitely need to do. And let's start with that list. We can go through those items, discuss why they are needed, and usually, everybody understands. And this is kind of a good starting point for any startup who wants to.
I wanted to dig a bit deeper. Can you give any line items from this checklist that Kepler may have?
Well, and again, what I'm going to cover here, it's more on the technology side and more on the product technology side. Because as we all know, HIPAA compliance, it's not just the technology, but it's also the processes that are utilized on the organization side, on the people side. Whatever secure system you might have, if you have a person who is not trained to properly use it, it can result in a data breach. If I have downloaded the list of the patients from my system and I, left my computer in Starbucks, it can just have a bad ending. But on the technology side, as I said, usually we start with the basics. Things like database encryption, up-to-date TLS certificates, setting up logging systems, setting up backup systems. These are the basics. But usually, we also go through things like code review, OWASP or NIST. We usually pick a security framework and just try to abide to those principles.
Olga, this is great. A lot of useful insights. What's the right time to bring an expert? If I have a development team that doesn't have a lot of HR experience, HR integration experience, what's the right time to involve experts like Kepler?
As soon as possible.
Tell me more.
Well, I think the right time would be when you actually do have a certain workflow in mind or a business purpose, right? Because usually
even before coding anything.
Before coding anything, yes.
Okay.
Because coding is important, but for example, when you build a house, you want to have a blueprint before. You need to understand, okay, I want a big house, I want a small house, I want a pool nearby, or maybe just, a playground also for my kids. So what you are building is important. And I feel this is even the most important part of it, right? Because scoping, creating the plan is pretty much essential, because you need to understand how much money you will need, right? You need to understand how much time you will need to build that. And having someone with an expertise at that stage is essential, because you can do it much, much faster.
That makes sense. So it's not a great idea to wait and build everything and find out that this is not going to be accepted by a marketplace.
Well, yes. Actually, we had experience when there was a lot of work done, and then EHR came and said, well, no, we cannot allow that, right? So you want to actually lay down your plan and be able to discuss it with the EHR before you actually implement that. Because if you already invested a lot of time and effort into creating that code, and then that is not acceptable, you kind of threw that money away, and time and effort. And
let me ask you a curveball question.
Yeah.
So it's all fun, and I understand the business side of using HR, but how excited are you or the Kepler team is about doing those projects? They don't seem like a lot of fun. You need to talk to those people who don't want to talk with you. You need to meet those compliance requirements, and you're not using those engineering brains to figure out complex algorithm problems and improve patient lives. You're essentially working through the bureaucratic process. So what gets you excited?
Well, engineers usually hate that. I agree with that. So that's why we have more business analysts, people with that specific skills who can conquer those challenges, who do that. But usually each product, it is not pull data from this and this API, right? Because there will be no purpose in that. Usually it's pull this data and do something with this data. Mm-hmm. Do something exciting, aggregate it, maybe scan it for certain specific for some specific information that you want to find. It's usually it's not that just simple integration. Usually it's something.
So there is a project behind the integration.
Pretty much, because if there is nothing, why would what is the value add of that startup, right? So they do something with this data, and most of the time this is something exciting.
So for anyone watching who is interested and wants to be like reaching out and kind of have a discussion, what kind of the process they can expect in terms of engaging Kepler?
You can call Olga Müller. Well, process is, we will talk about what kind of integration scope you're looking to do. What is your goal? We can probably figure out if we need a discovery phase, and what type of integration you are doing. Is it a bigger EHR? Is it a smaller EHR? Maybe we already have certain connections that we can utilize on our end. And yeah, we are going pretty much from that standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your answers, Olga.
Okay. You're welcome.